be going through a lot of different things in Adobe InDesign as well as Adobe Illustrator. And I'm going to try and spend a little more time in Adobe InDesign just because a lot of us, I think, use InDesign. A lot of us also use Illustrator, but anyway, I'm going to start in Illustrator. I know you all see InDesign open right in front of you, but I want to start with Illustrator so that I know we can kind of end in InDesign, and that'll help me kind of bide my time or keep track of my time a little bit better. So we've got a lot of stuff we can go over, obviously, right? We can go through and do a lot of different things in each one of these applications, but I'm going to hit some of the things that I tend to use quite a bit. I use Illustrator and InDesign like probably a lot of you. I use it every day, and I love Illustrator. Illustrator is one of my favorite programs out there, and some people think I'm crazy for saying that. But anyway, I used to go and work in Macromedia freehand, some of you that have used that before in the past, and I was kind of dragged into Illustrator, but now it's very familiar, so that's a good thing. But anyway, I want to show you a few things about Illustrator. I'm going to open up a brand new document here, and we're going to go out and do a little bit of drawing, show you a few tips and tricks, things like that, that help me get through my day, so to speak. One of the things that I really couldn't stand about Illustrator is the fact that if I draw and create things, let's say how many of you use the pen tool, right? Pen tool is your friend, right? So I go out and do this pen tool, get out there and start drawing, doing my thing, and you start to realize that, well, I need to do things like, I don't know, edit some points, move them, do things like that. And if you have artwork that contains a lot of anchor points, sometimes it's really hard to see them. Well, there are some preferences we can set to help you a little bit when you're drawing, and I want to show you those right now. So if I go up to the Illustrator menu up here, Preferences on Mac, and if you are on Windows, you can go into the Edit menu. You'll see that we've got things like General, all sorts of things. I'm going to go to General here, open that up. In the General Preference settings here, a couple things we're going to talk about in just a little while here. One of them is called Scale, Strokes, and Effects. This is a phenomenal feature. I use it all the time because it allows you to scale content and scale the strokes and the effects with the content. So if it gets smaller, those things will scale as well. You can turn it on and off, and I'll show you a couple different places to find this. One thing I want to get to here, I'm going to get to next and go to Selection and Anchor Display. This is where you can go, and I've already got it set, to change the size of the anchors and the appearance of the handles, the direction handles or direction lines, some people call them. By default, the anchors are going to be like this big, which is you know, these are not that huge. They're really pretty small, and a lot of us get kind of upset about this, but you can make them a little bit bigger. So if you click on the anchors to be a little bit bigger here and even change the handles, it's your call, whatever you want it to look like. But these anchor points can get bigger, and this is where you do it. You can go out and do things like also show handles when multiple anchors are selected. This is something that if you click on a bunch of points on a path, let's say, it'll show the handles for all of them, not just the two you have selected or the inside ones. This is something that you'll find in the control panel. We can turn that on and off. Some people hate this and love this. I don't know, it's your call, but highlight anchors on mouse over. If you hover over an anchor point with, let's say, selection, direct selection or something like that, it gets bigger. So no, it's telling you, hey, click here, you're going to hit this point. This is telling you to do that. This is actually turned on by default. You can deselect it if you like to do that. How many of you use smart guides? I know you don't have to raise your hands, okay. I'm raising my hand here. I use smart guides a lot. I turn them on. I turn them off when I don't want them, when they get in the way. Smart guides, for those of you that don't really know, in Illustrator are those, you hover over a point and it says anchor or something like that. And you move something and green lines start whipping all over the place and appearing. That's smart guides. They're on by default. We can turn off the things we don't want to see. If you don't want to see those green lines that are always appearing, you can turn off the alignment guides. There are certain parts of smart guides you can turn on and off, but keep the good stuff like snapping, which can be kind of cool. Anyway, these are a few things. I don't want to get too geeky here, but these are a few things that you can look at in Illustrator to help you as you go through and work in here. I'll click OK. All right, let me delete this. I want to show you just a few quick shortcuts for working with shapes. So a lot of us know some of these already, but I just want to kind of reiterate them, if you will. I go over to the rectangle tool, click and hold down, you'll see we've got all our tools. I can come and tear this off. There's a little teeny tear off thing here, and it just lets me pull this out as a separate little panel. unfortunately right now I can't dock this thing anywhere, but you can stick it up here, let's say. And then it's easy access if you're doing a lot of drawing. A couple quick tips here. Let's suppose I go to rounded rectangle. If you want to draw with the shapes, you can draw, obviously. You just click and drag. As you drag, you're going to see the Smart Guide measurement label, that gray thing. Well, as I drag here, if I want to move it while I'm drawing it, I'm still dragging, but I can hold my space bar down and drag it where I want it. That allows me then to let go of the space bar and keep drawing. You want to create a square, let's say. Usually constrain the sides of this thing. You hold down the Shift key. And you're doing all this while you're drawing, so you can keep dragging. If you want to draw, let me move it back here with the space bar. You want to draw an object from the center, hold down Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, and you can draw it from the center. Hold down Shift as well, and you can draw a square from its center. So a lot of little, teeny shortcuts like this. Now, if you work with some of these drawing tools, let's say like the rounded rectangle tool, the polygon tool, or the star tool, and you want to change the appearance of the object as you draw it, try using your arrow keys. So as you're dragging, let's say a rounded rectangle, as I'm dragging, I can press my, let's say, up arrow and my down arrow, and it'll change. You can see the round corners there. Sorry, I'm not too zoomed in here. And as I drag and wiggle, it'll go faster. I'm holding down the up arrow, holding down the down arrow. So you can see you can change this as I go. Now, the really cool thing, the thing I love about shapes is, let's say you draw something like this. I'm going to draw this little bar for a button, let's say. And I want to create the same exact thing. Well, we can either redraw it, which is kind of silly. You can copy paste it, right? Or you can do this. This is even faster sometimes. If you have a drawing tool, one of the shape tools rather, if you just click, it gives you, some of you hate this, right? I've done this before. You accidentally click and you get this stupid dialog box. Well, this is good sometimes. What this does, it says, okay, these measurements you see in here, these increments, these are the last shape you created. So it remembers it. So if I click OK, I get a copy basically of what I just did. So that can actually make it a little faster. So just click, hit return, and you got yourself a shape that's the same thing. It works for all of these basically. Now another thing too is as you're drawing, you can hold down the Command key. If you've got a shape tool selected, let's say, hold down the Command key, Control on Windows, and you get to the black arrow. You can then go in and delete, do your thing, and as soon as you let go of the Command key, you're back on the drawing tool. All right. Anyway, just a few, like I said, simple shortcuts for that kind of thing. Here's a couple of things that I think are really cool. They're really, really useful. Let me open up a file. I'll go out to my desktop here, and I've got a bunch of Illustrator files. How many of you have worked with things like gradient mesh or blends before? Well, if you have, that's great. There's a lot of great things we can do with these, but I want to show you a few key things that I think are worth your time that can help you to make more realistic illustrations, I guess you can say. Now, this is not supposed to be super realistic, obviously. I created this pretty quickly, but you're going to see that this whole thing is what's called this whole piece here is called a gradient mesh. Now, a gradient mesh, let me actually do this. Let me copy this thing. Let me move over. Oops, part of the gradient mesh, didn't mean to do that. Let me grab this part here. This is called a gradient mesh. What we can do is we can take a single object and apply a gradient along a mesh object or a mesh pattern that puts different colors in here and gives it a more realistic appearance. A gradient mesh tool is kind of, some people don't like it. It can be a little bit rough to get into if you try it the first time. Let me draw a shape here. And if I come over to my tools panel, you'll see that we have the mesh tool right here. I'll click on the mesh tool. There's a bunch of ways to start a gradient mesh. A lot of people will grab the mesh tool and click and start trying to do stuff, but then it doesn't really do much. It's adding these little anchors out here and these little cross sections. But one way I tend to start a gradient mesh object, if you want to try this, is to select a shape you create. And when we work with this type of thing, you try and use simpler shapes, okay? I can go up to Object, and you'll see Create Gradient Mesh. That allows you to take a shape and put in a bunch of anchor points and rows and columns and things like that. And if I click on Preview, you're going to see it's going to do it here for me. I can then go in and start to move these and kind of mold it like clay, if you will. Well, what we need to begin with, though, is we need some kind of color. So let me go out here, and I'm going to fill it with something like, let's say, a green. I don't know. And then go to Object, Create Gradient Mesh, click on Preview, and you'll see it's going to start to put little points out here. Now, we can change the appearance of this initially. Let's suppose you want to create a grape, I don't know, or a piece of fruit. You can tell it to go to center or go to edge, and it'll automatically go out there, and each one of these little points can have its own color. It just applies a white into the center or onto the edge. So it's a great way to get started here. So go to center, click OK. I don't really need a gradient mesh tool right now. These are just a bunch of anchor points. So what I can do is go out with my direct selection tool, start moving these around, and each one has little direction handles. You can move up and down. Each one of these little points, these little anchor points, if I click on it with the direct selection tool, can have a different color. So as I go out there and actually select it, let me do that, and make sure my fill color is selected. You'll see the fill down here, you guys, the fill box. I can change the color of it, and that starts to put a different color in there. I can tweak it, I can move it, reshape it, try different things. It's not the simplest thing in the world, but it's a great way to create more realism, and this is how I created this. Now here's another method. If you want to create, let's say, a gradient along a shape, okay, just a quick way to do that. Let's suppose I want to create a banana, all right? I know this is kind of dumb. You're not going to create bananas every day, but let me draw a banana shape real quick. Okay, that's kind of a banana shape. Now what you can do is you can take a path you create and you can blend the color to another path. So suppose I have this path here and I apply a stroke, like a yellow stroke to it. I'll put a yellow color on it. I'll make it kind of big so you can see it. I'm going to copy that. So we can Option or Alt drag to create a different shape, right? And I can go in and change the shape of this a little bit, you know, do some different things. I'm not going to get crazy here. We need to, you know, keep in time. And if I change the color of that, let me go over here. I'll do that. I'll change the stroke color to, let's say, an orange. This is not going to look great. Anyway, I can blend between these two using what's called the blend tool. So if I go to the blend tool allows you to blend between shapes or paths. The way it works is you come to the blend tool, or with the blend tool, you hover over the first thing you want to blend. You'll see an X. You click on it. Come to the next object, you'll see a plus. I click on it. It's going to blend. If I do a little manipulation here, a little tweaking, I got myself a banana. It's a little fugly. But anyway, if you want to, you can also start it out. You can go between 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines. It doesn't matter to create yourself any kind of gradient blend you want to. If you have this object selected still, and you go to the blend tool and double click, smooth color is what it's doing right now. So it's just literally saying, oh, let's make it smooth. You could tell it to have a number of steps. Like I could say, let's just have 10 steps in there. And if I click OK or turn on and off preview, you'll see it's going to put, and that's kind of dumb, anyway. You'll see it's going to put numbers of steps. It's going to put copies in there that blend from one color to another. So you've got a lot of options here, which are really great. Anyway, the cool thing about this is you can take a blend, and let's say I do something like this. Let me create another type of blend here. Think, and then think like that, and I'll change the color of that one. And I'll blend between the two of them. Click on the first, click on the second. Got myself a smooth color blend. We could go out and create, let's say, I don't know, a fish shape. I'll go create a fish shape. It's going to look really stupid, by the way, because I'm trying to do this really quickly. And fish, there we go, awesome. And what we can do is we can create this, make this a mask, essentially. So if you create a different kind of shape here, let's say I just create a little path. If I select these two and right-click on them, you'll see make clicking mask. And you can just make a mask out of it. That's a great way to be able to apply some nice shading into a certain shape. So I tend to use that quite a bit. That's actually how, if you look over here, that's how I got the little corners of the mouth here. Let me zoom out rather. I just have 2 little elbow shapes here, 2 little L shapes that I blended together using the blend tool. So anyway, just something to take a look at. Let me close this up, and I'll keep that open. Let me open up another file here. I'm going to show you a couple other things that I think are really kind of neat. Let me actually go to selections here. Now, if you want, you can do a bunch of different things drawing inside of Illustrator, right? There's a lot of ways to work in here. And one of my favorite things to work with is to make selections. This is stupid simple if you look at this drawing right here. It's not meant to be realistic, but suppose that I have a yellowish, yellow-green apple here that I click on, and I want to select all of the yellow-green apples out here on the artwork. Well, selections are something that you have to kind of master in Illustrator, right? There's 5,000 ways we can try this. if you want, you can go into what's called outline mode. Outline mode under View allows you to see the outlines of all the objects. Now in this case, it's not going to help us one bit because you've got all the tree shapes right here. But sometimes going into outline mode, the great thing about that is that it gets rid of all the fills. So if you have an apple, let's say in the middle of the tree here, you can drag across and touch it and it will select it because the fills are not there now. It's just a black stroke essentially with no fill. So sometimes using outline mode can really help you. Let me go to preview mode. If I click on the yellow, green apple, whatever this thing is, you can also use select similar. If I go up under select or up in the menus here or in the control panel, you'll see this usually, you'll see the select similar thing. You can select things with the same fill, stroke, stroke weight, opacity, appearance, graphic style, appearance attribute, whatever is listed here. I'm going to say fill and stroke color. That's going to select all of the green, yellow, whatever you want to call these things, apples out here and make it so that you can work with them. Now, one of the things I love working with too in Illustrator is if you go through the trouble of making a selection, let's suppose later on you're going to want to select those again. Well, instead of going through the 2 steps or whatever it took to get that selection, you can make the selection once and then save it with the file. If you select a bunch of stuff, and I go under select, you're going to see save selection. So click on that. You can save this as, let's say, apples. Click OK. Later on, I'm doing my thing and I want to go in and say, okay, let me select all the green apples now. I just need to go up to the select menu. You'll see that for this file only, I will see apples. I'll click on that and it will select them all. So anytime you're working with a file that's got rough selections, a lot going on, you can always save them for later use. You can also, of course, use the layers panel and make it a little bit easier for yourself to kind of work there, but we won't go there right now. I do want to do this though. Let me go over to another file that I've got and let me open it up. Let's see if I actually have some good layers on this thing. This is a web, whoops, sorry. This is a web design that I've got. Okay, cool. Now, talking about a little bit about layers, I just want to show you a couple little things in layers that I think are really useful. Layers, I don't know how many of you have mastered them in Illustrator or even like them for that matter, but I've gotten really used to them, and I've gotten used to the fact that I can use them to my advantage to select stuff and do all sorts of things. Well, let's suppose that I've got some content here, like some text or something like that, and I want to select everything on the text layer, like all the stuff that's there. Well, if you come over here, you're going to see that we have, let me zoom in a bit, hopefully this can help. You're going to see this little circle to the right, which is basically the target icon for the appearance, or you're going to see this blank area to the right over here. If you click on this little button, you're going to select everything that's on that layer or sublayer, or even if it's a group. So that's going to allow you to select stuff out on the page, or in the artboard rather. So if you click on something, you can even do it to the right here. A lot of people will use this. This is the selection column. You can click to the right over here, and it does basically the same thing. It just selects all that content on the page out there. And one thing I like to be able to do is I like to be able to copy stuff and paste it into another file altogether. But I want to keep the layers from this file in the new file. Does that make sense? Well, if I click, let's say I want to grab the icons here, and I want to grab the black thing here. So I'll go over here, and I can shift-click to select multiple things here, and I'll grab this Brian character. I'll shift-click to select all those things. I can then copy and paste in another file, right? That makes perfect sense. Let me zoom out here. I'll go to Edit Copy. I'm going to go to my blank file over here, and I want to paste that stuff, but I want to paste it with the same layer structure. Now, before you paste, if I paste right now, let me just go to Edit Paste, and I'll paste. It'll take a second here. Now, I already have it turned on. Whoops. Normally, what happens is it sticks it all in the single layer, but I want to bring these layers across. And like I said, I have this turned on by default, but let me undo that. Before you paste, what you can do is you can go to the Layers panel, go to the Layers panel menu out here, and turn on Paste Remembers Layers. This is sticky. It's going to stay on for the rest of your Illustrator life, so you turn it on and off when you need it. And you can just see it just did it to me there. But if you turn this on, check mark means it's on, and then I paste, you'll see it remembers all the layers and all that stuff is still on the separate layers. You can then take them and move these layers into another layer. They can then become sublayers, and you can kind of work that way. There's a lot of ways to work with layers, obviously, but anyway, the Paste Remembers Layer thing I think is awesome. I use that a lot. All right, here's another thing I want to show you real quick here. This is something that I show everybody, and I just think it's really useful sometimes. I don't use it all the time, but let's suppose you want to draw something, and I want to draw with the pen tool or the pencil tool. I want to draw an organic shape. I want to draw something like I don't know what I'm going for here, but maybe like a gourd. Okay, I'm going to draw a gourd. But what I want to do is I want to draw both halves of this thing. Now we can reflect and do all that sort of stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a quick way to do that. If you draw one half of an object, no matter what you draw it with, it doesn't matter. We can always come over to the reflect tool, right? There's 50 ways to do this. If you come to the reflect tool, if you want to reflect this in one step and copy it, here's what you can do. Come up to one of the anchor points. Let's say the end here. And you're going to see with Smart Guides turned on, it'll say anchor. If I Option or Alt on that, on Windows rather, Option on Mac, click on that point with the reflect tool, it'll give me the reflect dialog, and it will set the reflect around point right there. I can then say preview, and of course I have the, whoops, you guys, I'm sorry. I need to select my selection tool first and then select this thing. It only wanted to do one point. All right, let me go back here. Reflect tool, Option click. You're going to see reflect vertical and click copy. And there's my copy. And what's cool about Illustrator CS5 and later is if I have multiple shapes selected, like these two here, I select them both. If you want to join them to make it one, because right now if I move this away, there are two paths, right? I don't need to select points anymore. I can hit just Command J once, twice, and if you look down here, it even connects the points down there. So Command J is now something that we can do without having to select anchor points. It just does it, okay? Now, what if I want to draw both sides at the same time? How about that? Well, here's how I can do that. This is kind of cool. This takes a couple steps and it's getting used to, but I'll do this and I'll do one more thing and then we'll switch over to InDesign. In layers, if you go to the layer panel, you can only do this for one object on a single layer. So you'll probably make a layer for the object you're going to draw. If you click on the appearance icon, this little target icon right here, this is 0. If you then go up to Effect, Distort and Transform, you'll see we have Transform. Whoops, why did that go away? Distort and Transform, Transform. So once again, click on the circle for the layer, go up to Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. I know. We are going to have Illustrator rather make a copy as we draw. So it's going to go and make a copy. It's going to reflect it along the X, which is horizontally. Make sure you put it around the upper left corner here to make it so that it puts it right next to it. If you want to move it over a bit while you draw it, maybe you want to draw like some stuff in the corner, some scrolly stuff, and you want the other stuff to go over here, move it over as draw. But I'm going to leave it like this. So one copy reflect, upper left, click OK. I got to draw on this layer now. I'll go grab, let's say, my pencil tool, and I'll start drawing like that and check out what it does. So it's going to draw the second half for me, which is really pretty cool. You can also, like let's say I use a pencil tool or the pen or the direct selection or however you want to edit this thing. I can then go in and start editing, and it will edit both halves for me, which is kind of neat. Now, you're not always going to use this. There's sometimes where reflect works perfectly and blah, 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 but I really think that I do use that actually on occasion. So, all right, another quick thing that I want to show you that I think is really great. If you do anything with web, this is something you need to pay attention to that I tend to use all the time. And let's see if I can find something that actually is not working right. When you work in Illustrator CS5 and later, if you're doing web work, if you go to File, New to create a new document, okay, and you choose the new document profile called Web, I go into here in the New Document dialog box. If I look at the advanced stuff down here, you're going to see something called Align New Objects to Pixel Grid. In CS5 and later, we have this Align to Pixel Grid. That means that stuff that you draw in this new document is going to automatically snap to this pixel grid, so it gives you crisp edges. That's really cool. You're going to do web stuff. Suppose that you already have a document that you've created and it's already there. What you can do is you can click on something. Let's say I click on this thing here, or better yet, let me go over to my button over here. Click on my button, for instance, and I'll grab the button body, this thing right here. If you go up to the Transform panel, Window Transform, or up here in the Control panel, you see the word Transform, you'll see Align to Pixel Grid. If you select something and click on that, it will snap it to the pixel grid, okay? This is something, you got to do this with web work. I mean, Illustrator CS5 and later, this is something you have to, for most stuff, You've got to be able to do, okay? Now, it won't work on text and a couple other things, but if the text are shapes, then yeah, sure. But it only works on in things that are vector, essentially. So, and the really cool thing is this. If you have a document you created, let's say a web design or buttons or whatever you're working on, and you want everything to align to this grid, if you zoom in here, you're going to see the grid show up. See that right there? If you want to make it so that everything new you create is aligned to this grid automatically, go to the Transform panel, click on the Transform panel menu, and choose Align New Objects to Pixel Grid. That means that everything that you have out there that you create from here on out will be aligned. That's really pretty cool. Another thing you can do, this is one thing I found literally last week, I think is really cool. If you're working on a web page, something like that, a design, let's say, and you want to take everything that's not aligned, select it and align it, click on, let's say, one thing here that's not aligned to the pixel grid. If you go under Select, you'll see Object, Not Aligned to Pixel Grid. This is a sneaky little menu here I use all the time. You can select like clipping masks, you can select all sorts of cool stuff. Choose Object Not Aligned to Pixel Grid. It will select everything that's not aligned to the grid. Then you can go to Transform the panel and align it. And there you go, one step, you're all done. That's kind of cool. All right, anyway, with web stuff, there's a lot of great things we can do. You can also do things like this, which I think are really helpful. If you go under View, you'll see that we have what's called Pixel Preview. In order to see that grid and in order to see the pixels, normally we just see vector, and I had this turned on by default. Sorry for that. You want to make sure you go to View Pixel Preview while you're doing web work. That way you can see the pixels and you can see the grid and how things snap and align, and you can get things pixel perfect if you want to. All right. Anyway, there's a few things in Illustrator. I got to get over to InDesign because I said I was going to spend more time in InDesign. But let me close all these up. I will not save them. And let's go over to InDesign. Now, in InDesign, we've got a lot of stuff we can do. And if you've seen any of these in the past that I've done through Mall, some of the stuff you've probably seen, okay? But I want to throw a few things in here that I think are new and that are very useful as far as working with InDesign. First of all, when you work with InDesign, we can do things like set preferences automatically. We can do all sorts of great things. If you want to create new documents, and let's say you have colors that your company uses all the time for all the documents you create, or you're working on a series of jobs or something like that that requires a series of swatches. If you have no documents open in InDesign, this is the key, and you go to the Swatches panel, what you can do is you can literally add a bunch of swatches if you want. You can go to New Color Swatch. You can do a bunch of different things here. New Color Swatch. I'll create a new swatch. I'm just going to kind of fake this and say, oh, that's great. That's mine. Brian, okay? I make a new swatch. You'll see it listed here. If I create a new document from here on out, if I create a brand new document, I'll go to File, New, or use my shortcut, whatever. Create a new doc. It doesn't matter what it is. You'll see out here in the Swatches panel that this color is always going to be there just like the rest of my colors. This is now a default. So you can set, if you have no documents open, any colors or swatches rather you make, any paragraph styles you create, any character styles, any styles whatsoever, anything out here that you change will become your default for every new document. Now that's good and that's bad because what if you want to go back to just a regular old CMYK document? Well, then you need to do something called reset the preferences for the program. That's not too bad. All right, let me do this. I'm going to open up a document here. I'll go to File, Open, and grab an InDesign file that I've got. And I'm using InDesign CS55. It doesn't matter. A lot of this stuff will translate back 3-4 versions. So talking about colors, let's suppose you're working in InDesign, and you've got a document. Let me open up another document, as a matter of fact. I'll open up this one. There we go. Now, in this new document that I'm working on, I've got a series of swatches that I'd like to pull over or copy into my other InDesign document, okay? 50,000 ways you could do that. One of the easy ways, I think, and let's suppose I want to do it and I want to pick which colors. I'm going to go over to the CS5 magazine here. I'm going to pull those colors in. If I go to the Swatches panel, I'm going to create a new color here. So I'll just click, hey, let's make a new swatch. Doesn't matter. If you don't see that button, you can't click on it. Usually you can go to the menu and say New Color Swatch. I'm going to come over here to Color Mode, and come to the bottom. It's kind of weird, but come to the very bottom.